Well, hello friends. In this video, I will be continuing the discussion that I started in the previous video regarding the Robertson-Walker metric. This metric is important for cosmological purposes, as this metric assumes the all the proper tailored forms of the fact that the space is isotropic and homogeneous, and this a square holds the rest of the freedom that is left. So I have again written the metric, which I also have shown in the previous video. So this is the metric. It has a Lorentz signature, where I am taking the signature to be plus minus minus minus, with the spatial components to be minus. And this alpha, gamma, alpha, beta is completely a spatial matrix. It doesn't have a time part, whereas this has a time part. And you can see these terms. So these blocks, these are rectangular blocks of this 4 cross 4 metric, is 0. This being 0 shows that there is no mixing of the spatial and the time components, although there is time here as the dependence of a, which is just a scalar parameter. This so this, because of these 0, this is called the static metric. This is a static space-time metric. So let's move on. So I have also shown in the previous video the derivations, how to perform these Christoffel symbols. Rather, these can be derived using the metric components, and what is the relation between Christoffel symbols or the connection coefficients and the metric component is also given in the previous video. So I have explicitly written down here the Christoffel coefficients. These you can see, this is the time component fixed, and these run over the spatial components beta and gamma. And this is the first one. This is here, the time component is fixed, they are again spatial. This is of this form, and you can further see all the other ones. The explicitly spatial components has been derived here, but they really need to follow from the relation that we have between the Christoffel symbols and the metric. So, and also this here you can see theta phi interchange, and this shows that the torsion is 0. So let's move on. So the Ricci tensor is defined in this way, where you contract the Riemann curvature tensor in the central index, and the Riemann curvature tensor is described in terms of Christoffels using this, which I have also shown in one of my previous video, the first video of GR in my channel. The next thing is that what is after contracting to find the Ricci tensor, the one point is that as the G mu nu, as the metric is diagonal, we must always try to evaluate the diagonal entries quickly, because you see this for being this metric diagonal, it really helps out first evaluating the diagonal metrics. Anyway, in this case, in the Ricci tensor, all the off diagonal entries are 0. So this is the form of the Ricci tensor, like RTT. RTT is just Riemann. So there is T, so I must need M, T, M, T. So it's like Riemann T, 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 T plus Riemann R, T, R, T plus Riemann suppose theta T, theta T plus, like that. Okay, so you are summing over the central index of the Riemann tensor. So these are just calculation. They are definitely a bit tedious to do, but anyway, so it has to be done. Given all these calculations, we come to the Einstein field equation. And then here this is really an assumption. In this line you can see this is what says that this is a perfect fluid. The energy tensor of the perfect fluid is assumed to be of this form, where these are the macroscopic velocity parameters, and the fact that they are only dependent on time component shows that velocity, or the macroscopic velocity, which is the bulk velocity as a whole of the entire fluid, is not biased in any of the spatial direction. So that's again a very idealized situation, but this idealized situation is quite enough to show the beautiful concepts hidden in this. So following again, so you see, so I just need to plug the Ricci tensor and the scalar Ricci tensor, which both I have shown here. So these are the components of the Ricci tensors, and I have evaluated. So yeah, in this line you can see R is, I contracted the indices of the Ricci tensor with the metric. This is just this because of the diagonal property of the metric. This is just this. So this is the scalar Ricci curvature, scalar Ricci tensor evaluated, and these are the Riemann tensor, the Ricci tensor components, this line. So substituting everything for the time part or the temporal part, if you put here the 0 components everywhere, then you can just simplify. So R00 is RTT, which is just this, and here capital R, which is the Ricci scalar, is just this big thing, and this is lambda is the cosmological constant. This is the constant of gravitational constant. You can put the Newton gravitational constant. Well, then you simplify and then you arrive at this. This is the Friedmann equation. This is one of the Friedmann equation, which is the most important one. There are one more. There are two linearly independent set of Friedmann equation. So let's move on. Now I will discuss something a bit of a digression. So you see, we will start from Bianchi identity. So Bianchi identity is just this. You can also write it in terms of the other part. So G A B equal to 0. Okay, this just shows that the fact that if you expand this in terms of Christoffel symbols, you will see that there is one part that contains first derivative of time and another part that contains higher derivative, that is the second derivative. This Bianchi identity shows the split of the Einstein field equation into 6 plus 4 different field equations, separate, where the first 4 are just initial conditions and the rest 6 are the evolution of the metric. So anyway, we just take the Bianchi identity, we tensor it with the macroscopic velocity parameter, which I have written previously, 1 0 0 0. Only one component is 1. That is very beautiful for this velocity. Actually, it simplifies a lot of calculation. So you just tensor it like this, or you trace it, and then you will get you see, over the summation will only collapse to the 0 because only one component is non-zero, and you will get this. Expanding this using the Christoffel symbols brings us to this state, and once you have obtained this state, now you can just substitute for all the t's we have derived before. So I will just quickly say that because you see this, here is a sum between A and A, but you see for this T, which is the energy tensor, if A is summed and 1 0 is fixed, so suppose mu is 0 and this is getting summed over, unless nu is 0, all the components will die off because of diagonalized property of this metric, and the fact that only the zeroth component of these two survives, where each of these are the macroscopic velocity. So that brings us this, a similar line of thought. When you will sum over this, this I is also summed over, but as this is 0, automatically this will be 0, and these two will also collapse to only one component. No, they will, these two will only run, only A will run in this part, and I will get fixed to 0. So you can say that I gets fixed to 0, because all other components of I, when I is summed, will eventually be 0 because of the property of diagonal metric, as well as this macroscopic velocity. So this part brings us this part, and this part, in the similar line of thought, if you think, will give us this part. So 3 parts gives 3 terms, and that whole is 0. So this brings us to this density pressure relation. Density pressure relation. Now for the perfect fluid, we assume that the relation is given by this form. This is really an assumption and works highly in ideal cases only. I've shown this omega. This omega, if it is 0, then it says that however more density you have, your pressure doesn't change. If it is 1/3, that's the radiation pressure or the photonic pressure. So these are the various values. Now I will just substitute this into this density pressure relation, and I will just obtain, this is really a differential equation of rho and A, that will bring me to this point. So at this moment I have calculated my density in terms of the scalar parameter of the metric. Now I can put this relation into the Friedmann equation that I showed. So this relation put into the Friedmann equation reduces to this, and further we can substitute an ansatz for the A of t, which is the scalar parameter, in this form. This ansatz, if you wish, you can just put it back and check that it will work, provided that the curvature is chosen to be 0, that means the flat space time, and further I am assuming the cosmological constant to be 0. With all these substitutions made, the Friedmann equation can be solved, and solving the Friedmann equation will give you A as a function of t. Hence we have found out what is the explicit time dependence of the scalar free parameter of our metric. You can substitute this in this equation with cosmological constant and curvature equal to 0, and see that it will satisfy. And now comes the important part. So we define this function h of t, a dot by a. This is what is Hubble constant. So the function defined in this way is the Hubble constant. So the point is, you see, given omega, and you measure the Hubble constant, you can find out the time, you can find out how old is the universe. This is really as this is a dot divided by a, this parameter can be measured. This measuring gives us the time of the birth of the universe, from the birth of the universe. And now you can also take this thing, and then you can do a double derivative. And this really shows that the dependence of a double dot is dependent on 1 plus 3 omega with a minus sign in the front. Now you can find out the condition on which a double dot is greater than 0, less than 0, or equal to 0. And the analysis, the analysis shows that you can see, and you can see that you see the parameter a that we have chosen has dimensions of length. So this dimension a double dot signifies some sort of an acceleration, and if omega is greater than minus 1/3, this term a double dot is less than 0 and suggests that the universe is collapsing. But that's not the point. We have measured that the universe is actually accelerating. So that's the reason why omega has to be negative. So you see, we have made several assumptions. So how negative is that? That's not quite calculable from this short calculation of Friedman equation, but it suggests that the pressure and density relation should be this, which is actually quite opposite to our intuition. If you have more density, mass density, it is supposed that pressure exerted by that mass density should be increasing, but we see this negative parameter shows that it is actually decreasing. It's going less and less. So this is the almost you can say it's appropriate, not that appropriate, really an approximation to the dark matter equation. So I think this topic was clear. I hope all these calculations were easy to follow. Well, that's all for this lecture.